And we're back. Dan, what's going on at your house?
Well, I thought I needed a bit of a character change for the third quarter.
The dark side. So we've had a good chat in the first half. We're back again for second half, and this is where the real meat and potatoes, or soya and beans, of the interview. And our first question, Dan, what are your top hobby tips?
So, I get told off quite a lot for this. I say I'm not very good at modelling and painting. Mm-hmm. And I say this with great pride. It just occurs to me, one of the artists that inspires me, there's a gaming artist that inspired me about 10 years ago. Can't remember his name, but he ran a website called The Fighting Tigers of Vida. And it was one of the very early female marine armies. Mm-hmm. It was based on the Indian, as in Asia, mythology of all of the sort of Kali the Destroyer and that sort of thing. Ayurvedic myth, is it Ayurvedic myth? They were painted orange and black tiger stripes, and they were painted badly. It was basically just undercoated, sploshed orange, face, big black stripes, keep it really simple. And at a time when heavy metal was just starting to take off and Games Workshop were showing amazing looking miniatures and starting to really push the agenda that you had to have these amazing looking cinematic miniatures that are perfectly highlighted and perfectly composed and so on. And this guy was just like, I'm not interested in doing that. I want to just throw my models on the table and be writing stories about them and throwing dice at my friends. And that was a very major influence on me deciding that I look at models painted by like Monkey and Henry South and people that we've got in the club that are such talented model and painters. I admire them immensely, but I don't actually want to do that. My skill set is much lower than that. I'm not rubbish. I'm basically pretty good at colouring in now. So I can make my Marines blue. I can make their faces pink. I can give them shiny silver bits where the shiny silver bits need, and then I splash on some washes, and it's easily good enough for sort of tabletop arm's length purposes. And so I make a big deal of bragging that that's as far as I want to go, and that's all the skill I've got. And the reason I do this is because I quite often felt that there was an unconscious element of gatekeeping to the game when you're surrounded by these amazing models, because all of the models on the boxes and the shops and in White Dwarf look stunning, and you come down to Hate and you've got these astonishing figures for Infinity and people playing an amazing Age of Sigmar army. The bolt action guys are all the exact colours that the armies used to be in and things like that, and I have the greatest respect for it. But I don't want a stranger walking in going, oh, I could never do that. And then they come over at my table and it's, there you go, lead belcher, wash, there you go, that's an Adeptus Titanicus army finished. And I brag about my ineptitude as a way of trying to keep that door open to people coming in from that angle.
I mean, I've said on this podcast before, or video cast, what do we call it? Hatecast, before. I've never turned up at a table and looked at someone's army and gone, that's not good, that's not painted well enough. I'm not going to play you. Anyone who has had that happen to them, I don't mind as long as you've made an effort. And you put I want to play an unpainted army. Definitely.
I don't mind playing unpainted armies.
Yeah, as long as you put blue on, if Ultramarines, you put blue on the arm and you pink on the face.
Yeah.
You've made an effort to try and at least put some paint on them, and you will get better with time.
Yeah, I'll go further than that. If someone were to turn up with an army made of Lego men blue tacked to 2p pieces, I would play them. And I think this partly comes from because my gaming started with teaching a dozen kids to play. I didn't want any of those kids feeling they weren't welcome in our group because they didn't have any of the skills or the money to do it. So I built quite a lot of paper hammer tanks for kids. So I built a few dozen paper folded card rhinos for my son's friends so that they had a transport, because so far all their mum had bought them was a set of Marines.
I do recall, this is off a slight tangent, but over 25 years ago when I used to work at Games Workshop in Cambridge, there was a lad there and he suffered from, he had a neurological thing that meant his hands can't, he had the palsy, his hands always shut, so he could never paint a model.
Yeah, sure.
And so we just organised amongst ourselves, the staff, and we painted his army for him.
Brilliant. Yeah.
One of the best painted armies, in fairness.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Gaming is so social, and the vast majority of gamers want other people to join them and join in the fun.
Yeah.
So I go out of my way to make sure that anyone who comes to Hate and looks at that amazing Imperial Fists army and this amazing Infinity Squad and all this sort of thing, then comes over to my table and I go, yeah, dreadful at this. Honestly, you can't paint worse than I do. Just to sort of boost that signal.
The past, I was, not all of us are blessed. If you've seen my painting, not all of us are blessed as artists. But we try our best, and don't feel you have to be churning out a masterpiece. Like the Aidens of this world.
Absolutely. And I mean, I love seeing an amazing army, and I love seeing a beautiful army, and I have nothing but respect for the skills involved, and I will learn from them. But what I will generally learn is a little trick that makes life easier is much more useful to me than a complex system, a complex technique that I'll probably never get the hang of.
So your top hobby tip is accept.
Don't care.
Yeah.
Don't care. Start playing. Start having fun. Because once you've got half a dozen games under your belt and you love your army, then you'll get the motivation to start learning the skills that won't come at first. So.
I mean, I never really thought about that. It is in some forms. It is a gatekeeper because you're there going, I want to play this game. I want to play 40k. I need to paint 50 models.
Yeah.
And I've painted before. That is quite intimidating. I mean, when I started, I bought random models and painted them 7 or 8 times because I couldn't afford to buy new ones. I kept painting them. They got less detail and bigger. They got thicker levels. Until I'd been doing that for a few years, and then I started collecting armies, and and then and now I've managed to really push myself to being just a mediocre painter.
That's it. It's good enough should be your target. And then later on, you can take it higher if you like. But I mean, I don't think Games Workshop helps people by saying, buy any models you want, buy models that look cool and start playing with them. Because what will happen then is you will lose all of your games, you will get demoralized and you'll get bored with the game. And I think it should be the other way around. You should have fun with the game first. And when you're having fun with the game, that will then give you the impetus to say, well, that sergeant just survived a Carnifex attacks. I know I could paint him to have a dead Carnifex on it, couldn't I? And that sort of thing. And that's where the motivation, the love comes, and the bonding with these characters that you're building.
Definitely. Cool. Next question. What's your best hobby tool?
So this is a very recent addition. It's my airbrush.
Oh.
But unlike everybody else using airbrushes to do amazing work and zenithal highlighting and things like that, I'm using it for a very different set of reasons. I got given it from my wife gave it to me for my birthday in February, and then I was really lucky. I managed to book Monkey for a training day just before lockdown. It was pretty much the last thing I did before lockdown. I went over to Monkey's house. Hi, Monkey. And he gave me a day of learning how to load it, use it, clean it, strip it apart, fix it, and everything. And then he helped me paint, I think, one little Space Marine and one Gaslands car, just to show a whole load of different techniques. It's I don't use it as a fine artist tool. I use it as basically a indoor spray paint can. And because my wife gets migraines if I use rattle cans, and because rattle cans are just so messy anyway, the fact that I can undercoat in my bedroom is huge now. So the airbrush that my wife got me was a 50 quid set from Amazon or eBay, I think. A tiny little compressor that runs off 12 volts and a cheap, crappy little airbrush and the cleaning tools and so on. So it's not up to doing faded eyeshadow on your miniatures and freehanding word bearers.
eyeshadow on your models. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But what it's great for is picking it up and just going, right, I need to undercoat this model. Done. And 3 minutes later, it's ready to paint. It also meant I could do my first attempt at flames. So I've done a bunch of models for Age of Sigmar, the flame gaunt, the night gaunts, the ghost things, and I decided to do them as flames instead. And so it's just a band of yellow, a band of orange, a band of red, and a band of brown, and a band of black. And that wouldn't have worked with my level of brushing, and I don't know how to do glazing and blending and blurring and fidgeting and all those things. But an airbrush did the lot. So the airbrush has opened up a whole load of possibilities to me without all the complicated needs of an expensive setup. If you fancy getting into airbrushing, I'd really recommend the 40 or 50 quid ones as being just a useful tool. And
I mean, they can be a stepping stone. If you get one and you find, oh, I really love this, then there's nothing to stop you then going and spending, well, another £200 if you want to, if you can afford to then go. So if you are thinking about it, I'd say if you are thinking about it, go and visit someone that has one to try out first.
Totally. Well, I think someone in Hate a few weeks ago posted that was it an uncle or something had passed away, bequeathing a massive quantity of hobby stuff, and the person on Hate said they wanted to donate it to Hate, and it included an airbrush compressor. And I'm really hoping that Hate ends up with a house compressor and airbrush, so that on a Wednesday night someone could come down and any one of the airbrush users there can say, oh yeah, half an hour, buy me a beer, and I'll quickly run you through it. Because it's such a simple, useful tool with incredibly good results, even in the hands of an utter muppet like me.
Yeah.
In fact, the costume here is all about chaotic good. That's that. And for this third quarter, when the question's all about modelling and painting, that's my goal here. I want to lead you astray.
I've been led way astray already.
Yeah, lower your standards. Do a shit job.
I just want to get them to the point, because it's also time as well, isn't it? You these people who do Golden Demon winning models, some of them will paint 3 models a year.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Steve Hayden, thank you very much. He's another of the people that's been really useful at teaching me tips and so on. He only does, I think, maybe half a dozen models a year to astonishing standard, and stuff I don't even dare dream of it. But he taught a couple of years ago. I went over to his house and had a chat and I've spent a couple of hours there, and he taught me a load of basic tips on brush maintenance and how to actually use the paint and the brush rather than painting techniques, and that was invaluable at just helping me get better at colouring in the lines. So,
I think you said it earlier. I feel I did the same. I'm really good at 3D colouring in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brush 3D colour in, and it works. And a wash and a highlight.
Yeah.
And we're done. We're ready to go on the table. And that's all you really need. And if you want to spend, as everyone's aware of my piles, for that I've just been working on trying to get through them as quickly as possible, but to a standard I'm happy with. And it'll be nice when they're all done and my piles are cleared, and I can maybe go, right, I'm going to do this one model. I'm going to spend a week.
Yeah.
But right now, I ain't got the time.
No.
Ain't nobody got that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a matter of what, I mean, really, the gaming is 3 hobbies in one. You've got the modelling, painting, making the model side. You've got the gaming side, and you've got the fluff and background story side. And whether you want to play 1, 2, or all 3 of those, and whichever combinations of them is that should be entirely your choice. And you should never feel compelled that you have to be a good modeler or painter, or you have to have a really well designed background and fluff for your army or anything. It should be about, or for me, it is about having fun with friends, and gaming is the most important element of that. And the modelling and painting and the fluff are just there to fill in the gaps around the corners.
Yeah.
So,
airbrush.
Airbrush, but in the hands of a cretin. That's the answer.
Yes. Dan, do you have any motivational tips? What keeps you motivated? Or do you know any ways that help other people to be motivated?
Wanting to make my opponent's photos of our game look good.
Yeah.
That's my primary motivation for painting, because I want, when I'm playing someone who's put a lot of effort into their army,
trying to get in the back of the photos, trying to make them look.
Yeah. But yeah, so I wouldn't paint my armies if it was only for me. I paint them because when my Space Marine captain is facing down a demon prince, I want both of us to walk away with a great looking photo of that moment. So that's my overarching motivation. In terms of the motivation to actually get painting done, I've been historically very bad at it. I used to get most of my painting done at work because, as people that know me know, I'm a lighting engineer for live events, and events like weddings and boxing nights. The lighting engineer in the venue sits at the lighting desk for 8 hours and has very little to do, but can't leave the desk because every time the fight ends, you have to push those lights on and then pull it off again and then wait for the next one. Or weddings, you sit there for 8 hours and then suddenly there's the cake cutting moment, so you can't not be there. So you've got a lot of time to kill where you need to be fully cognizant of what's going on in the room, but don't have to actually do anything. So I used to have to set up my paints, and most of my painting over the past 5 years has been done sitting next to a lighting desk. So putting together a nice little painting kit that I could travel in my cycling rucksack and having a nice setup next to my desk meant that I could then actually get stuff done. And all the security guards walking past laughing at the weirdo who sits there painting plastic soldiers on a cage fighting night, that helps motivation, because anything that makes people laugh, at me or with me, I don't mind.
Yeah, but, I don't. For all the people out there, don't be ashamed of your hobby. Like for
absolutely.
Years,
absolutely.
Like, why on earth do they even bother? Like the people who don't, respect that you have a fun hobby. I mean, yeah, I like to be creative and work on a craft. I like to be sociable. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of there. So just
absolutely. Yeah. No, I hate shaming of any sort unless it's morally deserved. But if you have lots of fun with a bunch of your mates doing barbershop or Morris dancing or knitting or whatever it is, then that's a beautiful thing, and that should utterly be encouraged.
Is it fun? Yeah. Does it hurt anyone? No. Then what's the problem?
I mean, the joy that you see when you're at a club like Hate and there's a dozen, maybe 20 games going on, and the noise is thrumming, and every so often someone cheers or howls in despair at a dice roll, and
normally
laughter and so on. Yeah, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So, Dan, tell me about your favourite game. What's your favourite game to play?
I'd have to say Gaslands. It just because it's gloriously silly, gloriously fun, and very, very simple. Very easy for a newcomer to walk straight in. There's hardly any point in trying to get good at it because it's not the sort of game that you play that for those reasons. It reflects all of those movies that we've loved with the sort of banger racing meets Mad Max driving. There's bits of a Mad World. There's bits of Gumball, the Gumball Rally, and it's like, I don't know if you've got kids, if you've never been to a banger racing event, you have to take your kids to a banger racing event, because the joy of seeing all of this carnage that doesn't involve anyone getting upset or hurt because everyone's well protected is just so much fun. And I love games that have got unexpected and comedic turns. Adeptus Titanicus is a very unlikely contender for this, because you think it's going to be very dramatic, three big walking robots destroying cities, and then halfway through the game, one of them falls over and knocks the other one over, and the chain reaction as its nuclear reactor explodes, taking out all of the... It's just, you can't take the game seriously. And Gaslands is very good that way. It's very unpredictable. You think you're way ahead, and then suddenly you hit something unexpected and you realise that actually you're screwed. And it's fun. It's just so much fun.
And as you said, the models are easy to go. You can go to Poundland and buy a pack of models, and if you want to, go to your bits box, and you can. If someone online does a pack of bits, it might be North
Anvil
Star or something.
And Anvil do. And Anvil Industries. Hello to Joel and everyone at Anvil.
Hi, Anvil.
When Gaslands was really taking off about a year or so back, I actually went over to Anvil and ran a game for all of their of their office staff, just to teach them the mechanics of the game and so on, because they decided to do a range of add-ons. So they've got the upper half of a human hanging out of a window. So you can add a passenger or a driver or a gunman to it. Little turrets and flamethrowers to add on to that, whatever it is, 1 to 150th scale or something, I think it is, or whatever the scale thinking cars are. Hot Wheels scale, yes.
So you can be. You don't have to do a massive model to be creative. You can just get a Hot Wheels car.
My main Hot Wheels army is 2 cars, and they're both racing cars with no guns, so they don't even need modelling. So
yeah, I think when we played, I had some Orc vehicles for my 15mm Orc army, and they're just literally some old toy cars from my son's box didn't need anymore, so I just took those, sprayed them red, put some bits on them.
Yeah,
3 of them, and then we had a game. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that game, and it was really close, right to the end when you just won. If my car had hit your car, I rammed you. Yeah, I would have won. Knocked your car off, and then my car would have won. Yeah, it came down to a dice roll on the last turn, and as I said,
best games. I
was like the weird scientist guys who had to charge up my weapons, and I really enjoy
wacky Penelope pit stop stuff. Yeah.
So that was a really good game. Do you think you might get a chance to do some more of that down at Hate?
Oh, absolutely. I as far as I'm concerned, my Gaslands box is literally a shoebox sitting up on my shelf there, which has got about 4 or 5 teams in it with printed out little cards so that a complete stranger can walk in and play them. I absolutely guarantee that I will be playing Gaslands for the rest of my life, because it's a great game for getting kids into tabletop gaming as well, because it's so simple to do, and because it's based on templates rather than measuring with rulers and things like that. It's a game that kids can play. It's a game that people that have got limited mobility can play. It's a great introduction starter to tabletop gaming, and there's much less learning involved than.
Has an edition just come out? Is that right? Or
apparently, I haven't got it. I haven't felt the urge to. If I find there's a bunch of people that I'm going to be playing with who have, then I'll get it. As I understand it, it's more of a republishing the rule book with all of the FAQs and a few errata and a few problems that got solved, rather than a new rule set as such. And I think they've added some more. You've got 5 factions in the original book, and I think they've added a few more factions. So you can play as the Japanese mega rich investor who makes amazing sports cars that are really high performance, or you can play as the sort of American gun nuts who drive pickup trucks and have lots of guns but don't go very fast, and I think they just added a few more factions like that. So.
Cool, good. Well, that's another game to add to the list, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, it's another game that you can add to the list without having to get into, because just come down the club and you can play with one of my armies.
Well, I've got those 4 Hot Wheels Warthogs from Halo. I'm gonna have to give them some names. I have to paint their names on the back.
Yeah.
Or some numbers or something, but then they'll be ready to go, because they are 4 identical cars. And they'll be like, which one was which one?
yeah. You need the identifier. You definitely need the identifier.
We'll do that. So, what game do you fancy playing in the future? So I've it covered 9th edition 40k. But anything else?
So here's my next big confession. I am really scared of role-playing at Hate. I would love to get into role-playing games. I used to run Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition for my son when he was I started when he was about 7 or 8 years old, and I'd collect him and 4 or 5 of his friends from primary school, bring them home, do 2 or 3 hours of gaming, stick a load of oven pizzas in, feed them, and then the parents could collect them. And I ran a campaign for about 3 years doing that as the dungeon master. The kids got up to about level 17, level 18 characters. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely, really enjoyed it. I would like to get into role-playing games. I'd like to play as a character, and I'm terrified of how good all of you lot look when you're doing it. And I know that's wrong, and I know what I need is basically the opportunity to do something about this, and that means just joining in. But every time I see a whole bunch of 5 people come out of the boat bar talking about the amazing things they've done and the amazing creativity they've come up with, I get this horrible attack of, oh, I'm not good enough for that. So I would like someone to hold my hand and run some beginner's entry games for someone like me who doesn't really have the confidence to start.
Are you part of the Hate role-playing group, the RPG Hate?
Yeah.
I'd advise put a post up there, just let people know. I mean, if you're watching this, role players, please comment below or get in contact. I'm sure Dan wouldn't mind you reaching out to him directly.
I'd love to, yeah.
But I just say, if you ever have anyone else listen to this who has a concern and thinking the same thing, join the Hate role playing group page and make a comment, or just come and go to normally they meet in the boat bar, the little bar. Just go in and just chat and say, hey, I'm looking to, get into do some more role playing. I'm sure that we're a nice, friendly bunch.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't absolutely, yeah.
And just ask them, because I'm planning next year. I'm saying next year because I'm thinking I don't know how long this is all going to go on for before you can. Let's say next year. I want to do some more role playing. I've actually just ordered myself Black Hack, for those who know, which is like a kind of a D&D style game. And I'm planning to run a campaign next year. At Hate. We'll see how that goes. So I've got to write the thing first. That's part of the fun, isn't it? The creativity coming up for it.
Yep.
Yeah. So just reach out to some. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of games, and you can also do it during lockdown as well. I know a lot of the.
That's something I'd really like to have a go at, because my work has always precluded me from doing campaigns and things at Hate, because I could never reliably make a weekly meeting and things like that. So while at the moment I'm very happy to have a go at doing it on Zoom or Skype or whatever the various formats are and so on. I did actually have one evening of gaming quite a few years ago with Guy Oliver. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Guy.
Who DM'd a game for me and his wife and his friend and his friend's wife, and only Guy and his friend were seasoned players.
Yeah.
And a whale of a time. But it was the 3 hours shot by and then it was over, and we never managed to revisit it.
It's always way of role playing, isn't it? You're just getting into it, and it's like, it's been 4 hours, guys. It's time to call.
And as I understand it, I think what would be sensible for me to start with is it micro gaming, where you have short one-shot games. Is that the right term?
I know you do one-shot games where you turn up and just have one game in an evening, and it's like quite a short game. They're quite good fun. You can get ones that one-page rule sets as well. So like the really simple rules, and you play it for 1 evening. The throwaway thing, like a palate cleanser for role playing.
Yeah. I mean, when I was teaching, when I was running the 4th edition campaign for my son and his friends, I had to do so much background reading for that, because I bought the books, I learned the systems, I created their characters for them. I let them choose and roll their characters, but I calculated all the spreadsheets to speed up the dice rolling and so on. And I'd like to get into role playing as an adult and as a character in such a way that doesn't mean me having to do hours and hours and hours of planning my character before I even know what the game's going to be. So a game that allows me to just sort of walk in, almost board game style, walk in and start playing. Doesn't have to be any particular set, doesn't have to be a fantasy or cyberpunk setting. It's whatever it is that just basically gets us to the point that we're starting to go, oh my God, what do we do here? Rather than having to think about, right, now you need to roll for charisma and calculate how powerful your magical sword is going to be based on your charisma.
Yeah, no, the rule set is just a system in place, and it could be any kind of, if you're a games master and if they know the character completely and the world they exist in, you shouldn't need any rule set to role play but some people also like to have the familiarity of a rule system and a grid, to work within, a framework to work within, to run their games. So yeah, I guess it's finding the one that works best for you. How complicated do you want the rules to be? I'm very much the mindset that okay, at level 7 you unlock an extra 10% on the energy for your spell casting. When it's all really micro, you can get all caught up in balls rather than just let's draw a card. Okay, as a king.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that makes the game better, and the more complicated the mechanics of any game, the more accurate it can be, which can be really good and really part of the game. But that also acts as excluding a newcomer to that game.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about 8th edition 40k, massively oversimplifying everything, was it made it a lot easier to teach someone to play than it used to be. Yeah. So I think that I just need to get over my fear of not being good enough, and that's what's holding me back with role playing at the moment. So that's
Dan, you're good enough. You're worthy. It's okay.
Yeah.
We all start. I mean, you're a veteran. You've run games, but we all start somewhere. We all start as a beginner. Yeah. So just give it a go.
Yeah.
And then come back and tell us how you did.
Yes. If someone, please invite me to a game that I can join in, and I will give it my all. I just need to get over that lump.
Yeah. Bite the bullet. Dan, this is one of the toughest questions. Probably maybe the toughest question I have to ask you. What's your favourite club memory?
So a lot of my favourite memories are the ones I can't remember because I was so excited by them that I didn't commit them to long-term memory properly. So there's that. Sometimes it was me cheering or booing at a dice roll. Sometimes it was the person next to me and I'm just knowing that their game's gone that well. I love the atmosphere at Hate. Hate's the 4th gaming club I've been in. And the other gaming clubs I went to were, one was much more serious. Everybody was sat down quietly, stroking their chin and thinking about tactics. Another one was so heavily into 40k and nothing else and didn't like people that challenged the Games Workshop mythos. Whereas the anarchistic, iconoclastic approach to gaming that you get at Hate is joyful. So I love the fact that you've got lots of different things going on at once. So that constant excitement is a large part of the high point for me. Specific moments or games, I love the big group games. The game that Sasha ran with about 17 of us, each playing one Marine, was a cracking game where we were chasing his demon prince throughout a Space Hulk. The 9-person game of Gaslands that I ran with help from Richard. Hello, Richard. Those are amazing. And then I've also got to say the auction that we did for James Flowers. James was one of the stalwarts of the game of Hate for many years. And when he passed away and his mum looked at his gaming room and the shelves and went, oh my God, what do I do with this? So I and a few others basically auctioned off everything that James had, which was everything from Rogue Trader and first edition Dungeons and Dragons right up to latest models and so on. And we raised thousands of pounds, which then sent his bereaved mum on a holiday. And that was brilliant. That was the community just coming together in a wonderful way and such a wonderful legacy.
Yeah.
So, hi, James.
That was very much. Hi, James. Yeah. Right. On that, we can take another break.
Okay.
We're going to come back and the big questions, the big 4 questions. Well, 5 with the one from Monk from last time, and we'll come back and we'll ask those.
Fantastic.
Just a second.
See you shortly.
And we're back. Dan, have you changed again?
Absolutely. Well, I felt absolutely.
Yes. Shirt.
Absolutely.
Well, I was talking to Monk last week saying we need to get some Hatecast t-shirts, so we'll have to get some on the go. Any ideas for designs, do let us know.
Absolutely.
Here we go. We've got the 4 big questions now, Dan. And perhaps this is the most challenging of all to start with. What is your favourite paint and why is it non-oil?
Well, it isn't. This ties back to my airbrush thing. It's the Vallejo Mecha Air range. This is Vallejo's, the company that make Model Colour and Game Colour. They do a range called the Mecha range, which they've specifically formulated for the growing fashion for people buying Gundam robot models and painting them your own way, but then giving them to your kid and smashing them into each other. So they formulated these really hard-wearing acrylics that are very pigment rich to give that sort of cartoony computer 3D Michael Bay films vibrant colours. And the Mecha Air range are specifically formulated and pre-diluted for use in an airbrush. So an idiot like me doesn't have to spend hours getting exactly the right consistency before it works. And the Mecha Air primer sprays, oh my God, they stick to the metal so well. To the extent that with your airbrush, when you use a normal paint in it, after you've finished, you clean it by rinsing it out with water and cleaner, squirt it through, and it's done. If you're using a primer in it, you have to get a cotton bud out and give it a bit of a wipe and spray it through, and it's done. With this Mecha airbrush range of primers, you have to sit there and scrub it to get it clean because it bonds so well. And I'm finding that with some of the Badgers and Burrows minis that I got, which are incredibly detailed with very fine brocade on the waistcoats and things like that, I can do just one, maybe two very light passes in this specifically formulated, tough acrylic primer, and not lose a shred of that detail. And I used a rattle can to undercoat something a few days ago, just because I just needed to do the whole thing in lead belcher. So I thought, oh, sod it, I'll just do that. And it made me realise just how dense rattle can priming is compared to airbrush primer, especially if you use one of these specifically formulated primers to use in airbrush on hard-wearing models.
It's very easy for a rattle can to put it on just too heavy.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I'll get Gary to put a link to the one that I mean. It's that they do a range of a whole lot, and also so a rattle can's what, £12 now for the proper for the Games Workshop ones, and still about £9 or £10 for a Halfords one. The amount of models that I've undercoated this in lockdown using 200 milliliter, the slightly bigger bottles of the Vallejo primer, I would say that I've actually saved money by buying a £50 airbrush and one bottle of primer compared to the number of rattle cans I'd have got through with the same number of models. So literally, by the time you're on your fourth rattle can, you'd have been cheaper buying a cheap airbrush and a formulated.
Yeah, these things they do add up. They do add up. Yeah. I mean, I'm awful because I just go to my local cheap Poundland place near me, and I buy white primer for £2 and. That's using, but not quite as good.
Plus, also environmental impact. I am no longer putting aerosols in the bin, so I'm really pleased with that.
Dan, what is your favourite dice? This is the really controversial. This really, it really tears the group apart, I think.
It is. I've got a D100 that's quite cute, which basically looks like a slightly coarser golf ball. But it's ridiculous because if you roll it on anything other than a perfectly smooth table, it will just roll off the table every time. So that's quite cute. My turn counter, you could just about argue, is a dice that I made myself. I made myself a cuboid of wood and printed a paper cover for it that says turn 1, this is the special rule that Dark Eldar get in turn 1. Turn 2, this is the special rule they get in turn 2. And so that in countless times has helped me to remind myself that by the time I get to learn the fourth turn, I automatically pass leadership tests and things like that. So it looks like a dice, but it isn't a dice. So yeah.
So we're going to go a D6. I don't think we've heard anyone say a D6 yet, actually.
Yeah.
And a D20, D4s.
Yeah.
For a D24, never even seen one of those before.
I automatically object to anything that isn't a platonic solid. So they should only be the 5 standard, the 5 standard patterns of dice. as the mathematician. So a D24 isn't a real dice as far as I'm concerned. It's not atomic solid.
Terrible. Dan, bards, yay or nay?
So as a non-role player, I know very little about this. But from what I can gather, they are much more about making the story fun rather than it being about fights. Is that?
It's sort of empower the rest of the group with their beautiful singing and loot.
Yeah, I love that idea. To me, a small group role-playing game should be about everyone working together and cooperating. And when I was running games for the kids, I made a point of I largely played the official dungeons that were released, the Winterfell series.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd fudge when I was planning the next session. I'd fudge quite a few things. I'd remove monsters that would mean it would be basically a 3-hour fight. I'd add in extra challenges that were about problem solving, and seeing this bunch of 9 or 10-year-olds getting so immersed in the game and suddenly realizing that the one person in their squad that can save them is the one that hasn't got any fighting skills or anything like that. Those were always glorious moments. One of our kids wanted to be a dragonborn paladin because he was the kid that was really good at rugby at school and so on. And he wanted to solve all of his problems by being big and strong and fighty. So I made lots of little scenarios that meant that his character really got frustrated, and that he was saved by the halfling rogue who could sneak through a small hole and things like that. And that kid came to recognise throughout the year or two we were playing that his solutions weren't always the best solutions to any given circumstance. So from what little I know of bards, I like the idea that they're about community and cooperation rather than punching orcs.
Excellent. I don't think I've had anyone who hasn't liked bards yet. I mean, I think like any tool or character, if it's used in the right way, it can be fun.
Yep.
You know, if it's used in the wrong way, it can be annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Last of the big four, Dan. Mimics.
I know far too many people that I think I ought to classify as a mimic to be enthusiastic about them. I'm all for people role playing in public. I really came out of my shyness in my 20s. I bought myself a walking cane in Camden Market one day, and I was walking back through London, and I realised that you could either walk with a cane carrying it in your hand, or you can effect a reason for having that cane. So I decided to play a character who walked with a cane. And the responses that I got from the public were so different from the responses I normally get as being the person I was then. It suddenly made me realise I can play roles. And I got into amateur dramatics, and I got given a couple of roles that allowed me to explore people that I'd never been before. And I started playing a confident Dan Sanders, which is a role I'd never played before. And I had to play it as a role because I wasn't a confident Dan Sanders, but I could pretend I was one. And I sort of found myself through doing that. And now although there is generally a couple of main Dan Sanders. The Dan Sanders lighting engineer is a very professional, well-organised person. The Dan Sanders gamer has lots of fun and is self-depreciating. The Dan Sanders scout leader is responsible, although still quite anarchistic. And slipping from one role to another, I think, is a very important life skill. So I think everyone should have a go at mimicking other characters. Just don't get too caught up in that particular character. And I know that's to do with what the question was, but that's why I've decided to interpret the question.
That is fine. I accept the answer. Clearly, Dan's a mimic, is what the answer is there.
Absolutely. Be a mimic, but be an honest mimic.
An honest mimic. Honest of yourself is the important thing. We had a question from Monk, our last interviewee, and he asked if there was who inspired you, and you were getting into the hobby. Was there an individual who inspired you and made you want to get involved or inspired you to do more things? Was there an individual like that for you, Dan?
I wouldn't say an individual as such, but I will give credit to a handful of people, one of whom I've already mentioned, the chap that ran the website for the Fighting Tigers of Vida, who played a proxy army of female Marines that were badly painted and wrote long blogs on why that was okay. So that gave me the inspiration to push forward with gaming when I felt that I wasn't good enough, or that there were things I didn't like about it. He inspired me to make it my gaming. Some of the amazing painters and modelers we have at Hate have definitely been inspiration for me. Monkey's work with his Alpha Legion really inspired me to remodel my models more. My recent additions to my steampunky Drukari army, Monkey's leaping dreadnought with the swinging axe was just such an amazing dynamic model that it inspired me to completely remodel my armigers. So yeah, it's a whole string of micro inspirations rather than any one particular dominant. But I certainly didn't have anyone who got me into gaming.
No older brother, friend, or nothing like that, or didn't go to a store.
Yeah, I mean, one of my best mates, Rob McKinley. Hi, Rob. He has been an amazing modeler and painter since first edition. He's got a stunning looking old hammer Space Wolf army, and he both inspires and irritates me in equal measures, because every time I come up with something creative, he tells me why it's wrong, and that makes me so even more determined to flesh it out and make it wrong in the right way. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So one thing I need now, last thing is, do you have a question for our next guest?
I don't, and I'm completely unprepared for it. So I'm going to riff off a couple of conversations that have been happening both in and outside of Hate recently about inclusivity and breaking down some of the problems that we have in gaming being so heavily represented by the sort of white, straight male demographic.
Yeah.
So I don't want to try and use other people's voices here, but what I'm going to ask the next person is, how are you going to get your daughter to get excited about playing games?
There we go. Good question. How are you going to get my daughter?
No. What are you going to do to drag people in?
And she decided to collect Imperial fists. So she's already. I'm like, my first advice was, they're yellow. That's not the best idea.
Undercoat pink.
But how are you going to get your daughter?
Yeah.
Excited about gaming? So that's a really good question. I look forward to hearing the answer from whoever's next. Dan, before we draw this interview to a close, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Always is.
And you too, mate.
I've got to play you a couple of games at Hate next time we open.
Absolutely.
But is there anything we haven't talked about? Anything you wanted to say while we're here?
No, I don't think so. I think that this Hatecast has been such a lovely project. Thank you so much for doing it, and Gary for all of the hard work behind the scenes. It's
the hard work. Really,
yeah.
It's all...
Thanks, Gary. Right from the beginning, we were a couple of weeks into lockdown, and all of us were feeling really lonely. And finally, being able to sit and have a game of beer with you and Tom Catsey was delightful. And then was it Mira was next? I think, which I think for me was a big eye opener in some of the conversation topics that I just mentioned about diversity and inclusion, and the current conversations we're having there. And then just the joy of seeing a whole bunch of friends, the people that I would always go bounding over to when I'm there on a Wednesday night, and being able to just sit and hang out with them for an hour and a half. So yeah, just thank you for doing this, and I hope everyone else is getting as much out of it as I am.
My pleasure. It's just an excuse to have some chat, for me to have a chat with some friends,
Absolutely.
And I hope it in some way it helps a little bit with us all. We're all in lockdown. We don't want to be here, and we can't wait to get back. But till then, let's have a few friendly faces.
Indeed. And my wife's just turned up with coffee. Thank you. She's sneaking in without being seen. So
sugar, please.
Cheers to everyone at Hate. Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you.
Cheers, Dan. I'll let you get on with your coffee. You take care. Thanks for joining me today.
Cheers, mate.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.